That day, officers were beaten and brutalized. I myself feared for my life on multiple occasions, or feared that I was going to be permanently maimed, whether it was when someone was trying to gouge out my eye with his thumb, when I was being surrounded and beaten by the mob trying to work my way up to the West Terrace, when I was being crushed in a door, or beaten with my own baton.
2 police officers at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th in Wisconsin this weekend, holding events across the state and campaigning for President Biden.
That day turned incredibly political and now polarizing as officers Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges sit down with us. 3.5, almost 4 years later, what do you remember most about that day?
The pain, the fear, the terror in my coworkers' eyes. Like, a lot of us didn't know how it was going to end, if they were going to go home to their loved ones. Just that pain and the visceral anger that mob had. It wasn't just a bunch of peaceful protesters. These people were legit pissed off, and you could see it in their actions.
Yeah, the violence, the incredible persistence of the mob. Usually when we use defensive tactics in riot formations, they're effective in repelling or dispersing a crowd. These guys just took it and kept going. I've worked many riots and stuff like that, never an insurrection, but never
You call it an insurrection?
Yeah, absolutely, that's what it was. They had a unified goal, and they were all attempting to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
January 6th has become so polarizing and so political. I'm curious
Isn't that crazy?
You think so?
That's something what we saw with our own eyes. Sorry, I'd interrupt you, but isn't it crazy that people can have so many conflicting opinions about what we all saw? It's almost infuriating. Like, sure, we can argue or debate why X, Y, and Z happened, or the police weren't prepared, but we can't negate the violence that took place that day. Like, that's insane to me.
Do you fear campaigning for a Democratic president, you're diluting what happened that day or adding to the controversy?
No, I think it's more important for us to continue to be out here speaking about what happened, because on the other side, they're whitewashing it, downplaying it, saying that Donald Trump referred to the guys, the people of January 6th as warriors in Nevada in his last speech. It's like, warriors? So as long as they are out there peddling that, you'll see us, people like us, pushing back.
Yeah, when opponents talk about how we're making this political, they're saying more about themselves than they are about us or about what happened. Because if, just hypothetically, if, Donald Trump won in 2020 and Joe Biden tried to overturn the will of the people, I would do the exact same thing they did against Donald Trump. I would have testified to Congress about it.
Is there any attempt on your part to talk with and reach Trump voters, or is this more about talking to the Democratic base ahead of November?
I'm happy to talk to anyone who's willing to talk.
Anybody that wants to listen.
Yeah, and
do Trump supporters want to listen to you guys?
That's the thing, not many.
I have not. I have certainly never met any in person who have indicated as much. I have to believe that there are those who committed crimes on January 6th who understand what they did was wrong and are willing to change. And you have to believe that. Otherwise, there's no point in having this conversation. This whole culture war is just going to go on forever. But you have to be willing to forgive people if they are willing to accept responsibility for what they've done.
While we're traveling the country, last week we were in Pennsylvania. We were at the state capitol in Harrisburg, and the Speaker of the House acknowledged me and Sergeant Gonell. We didn't give a speech, we just were acknowledged. And Republican lawmakers booed and walked off the floor in protest. Like, our presence made them in disgust. Like, I would have sat there and talked to them, but we didn't give it. We were there. Our presence, just our mere presence, just disgusted them enough. And I said, we'll have conversation. Okay, what's your gripe about January 6th? Let's talk about it. Because I was there. Maybe you were too, And I'm happy to discuss anything, but there are people that under no circumstances will ever say Donald Trump did anything wrong, and they'll never leave his side. And you know what? You can't reach those people. But what I'm trying to do is reach as many people that are just like, I don't understand what happened, and I'm trying to paint a clear picture for them.
All right, up next, the instant reaction to those comments by former President Donald Trump.
So that's where the comment came from, that Milwaukee is just terrible.
Our delegation on the record next.